Hello everybody, it's Nick here with Nick Tolman Music, and today we're going to go ahead and officially kick off our new guitar series using Leonard's Guitar Method, Book 2. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so today we're going to go ahead and take a look at page 2. This will be our first lesson here in Leonard Guitar Method Grade 2. And so this lesson is going to be great. We're going to learn a new chord, which is the A minor chord, which should not be a challenge, especially if you're really comfortable with the C chord, which we learned early on in Book 1. We're going to have a few chord progressions that we're going to walk through, and we're going to learn a new song called Sinner Man. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So starting off with the A minor chord. So the A minor chord, I'm going to go ahead and put the diagram up here. To me, I like to think about the A minor chord similarly to the way that I think about the C chord, right? In conjunction. Now that's important too because these two chords are relative, right? So what I mean by that is when we talk about the key of C major or the key of A minor, which we'll get into a little bit later, they're the same key signature, and we call those relative keys. Now the chords of C major and A minor, the notes in the chords are almost the same, right? There's only one note difference between the two, so they're very similar chords. So a lot of times when I'm learning the A minor chord, I like to practice it in association with the C chord. Maybe start with the C and practice just moving that third finger off and up into the new position for the A minor chord, right? So kind of building this chord from the bottom up, we're going to have an open A. We're going to have our second finger on the note E here on the second fret of the fourth string. We're going to have our third finger on the note A, second finger of the third string, and our first finger on the note C, first fret of the second string, and then an open E, right? And again, moving back and forth between C and A minor is a good place to start when getting comfortable with the A minor chord, all right? So there we go. That's the A minor chord. Let's go ahead and dive in. So exercise 1, I'm going to go ahead and turn my metronome to 72 as a good place to start. And we're just going to strum some quarter notes, getting used to this new chord. 1, 2, ready, and go. Now you'll find that initial move on this very first exercise going from A minor to G is a big move because every single finger moves, right? Now when I have those situations, you know, we've talked in the past about anchor fingers, right? So if I move from A minor to C, we have two anchor fingers, right? Two fingers that don't move, and it's just that one finger that moves. Those anchor fingers can be really important, but when we have situations like this from A minor to G, where there's no anchor finger, they all have to move, I like to kind of find a finger that has the smallest movement and use that kind of as my anchor, right? Kind of as my quasi-anchor, all right? So for me, in this move, that is the second finger, right? Because I know that that second finger, all that it's going to do is just move one string over, right? It's pretty much in place. And if I can get that, the rest of the fingers can kind of fall into place where they need to for that chord. All right. So whether or not you actually have an anchor finger, I'm always kind of finding that one finger that's kind of the driver in a chord change. All right. So if you're having trouble moving from that A minor to G, you can keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and bump this metronome up to 120 and strum some more chord notes. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and... And there it is, at a faster tempo. And again, these kind of chord exercises, you can take them as fast as you want. You can experiment with different strumming patterns and things like that. That's not a problem. That's good thing. Those are good things to do. All right. All right, let's go and take a look at exercise 2. It's going to give us a different strumming pattern, and we're also going to use E minor. All right, so here we go. Here's the metronome at 72. 1, 2, and ready and play. All right, so this one is very similar. Again, when you move from A minor to E minor, there's no anchor finger. However, it's a really easy move because your second and third finger are just moving up one or down one string, and they're staying in the same shape. Your first finger is just coming off, right? So I move from A minor to E minor. Should be a relatively easy move, right? And then we're just adding that new strumming pattern, that down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, right? And it says continue strumming pattern. That's pretty common. If it outlines a pattern for you in that first measure and then just gives you slashes, it's pretty common to just kind of expect that that pattern is going to more or less stay the same throughout those slashes, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and bump that up to 120, see what this sounds like a little bit faster. This is a good goal tempo, but definitely not the limit. If you want to go faster, you absolutely can. Here we go. 1, 2, oh, 1, 2, and ready, and... All right, now if you're new to my lessons, basically the way I use the metronome here is I give you a tempo kind of on the lower end of the spectrum. Definitely not the slowest you can go. If you need to go slower, absolutely please do. And I give you a tempo kind of on the faster end of a spectrum for any given exercise. A lot of times for these just chord exercises and things like that, I do 72 and 120. Those are not the limit, right? You can absolutely go slower, you can absolutely go faster, and the idea is that you slowly build in between, right? So don't necessarily just jump straight from one to the other, but you can take your metronome up a few clicks at a time, and get used to playing it at a variety of different speeds. It's really good exercise to be able to play at any tempo, so your metronome is really great for that. It's an essential tool, all right? So let's go ahead and look at exercise 3. Back to 72 on the metronome. And again, this one is going to incorporate the C chord, A minor, C, G. Good little chord progression. So here we go. 1, 2, and ready and play. All right, so that's the idea. This time the strumming pattern is down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, right? So a little bit different, but a really common strumming pattern there. Again, that move from C to A minor should be a really easy one. You're just moving one finger, and then you're back to C, and then from C to G we should have that under control from book 1, right? Real simple movement. Your second and third finger are going to move down one string, and then your fourth finger is just going to drop down on that third fret. You're good to go. All right. Very good. All right, let's bump that tempo up. Here is 120 on the metronome. Exercise 3. 1, 2, oh, 1, 2, and ready, and... All right, now with any of these exercises, 1, 2, or 3, go ahead and feel free to put a repeat on the end and just loop them over and over and over again. They're really great to just practice, cycling through these chord progressions and getting comfortable moving between those chords. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at Sinner Man. This is our first song that we're learning in this new book. This is exercise 4. I'm going to go and play it for you at 72, and then I'll add the chords, and then we'll see what it all sounds like at a faster tempo after we walk through it. So here is the melody at 72 on the metronome, Sinner Man. 1, 2, and ready and play. 2, 3, repeat. All right, so that's the melody. Let's go ahead and talk about this a little bit. Now, if you have just finished book 1, this melody shouldn't be too challenging, okay? It really is just kind of incorporating very basic concepts that we learned early on in the book, being able to read the notes. We have half notes, eighth notes, quarter notes. Pretty simple, right? There are a couple fingering things, and I love this about getting into book 2 because there's going to be more and more little nuances that we can do that are just part of being a guitar player, about making your life easier and making your music sound better. All right. Now, when we start at the beginning, we just have that open E, right? Eighth notes down to A, reading the notes, and then we have this thing. Now, this is the spot, okay? So, normally we would play that high G with our third finger, right? And then the very next note is a D, which we would also play with our third finger, right? I call this the one finger jump, right? And I, as a player, I try to avoid this whenever possible, okay? Because what it does is it creates gaps and makes things kind of like less smooth, right? So if I play that with my third finger and my third finger like we normally would, we get a little bit of a gap from that G to the D. Let me just play that. Second measure going into the third measure. Right? Now, if you're really quick about it, you almost don't notice. Right? But if you're not careful, there can be a gap as you make that change. So what I like to do on this one is I actually like to play that G with my fourth finger, right? And that helps eliminate that. Right? Because you can play those at the same time if you wanted to, but that helps to smooth that connection between those two notes. Right, so I would take a note of that, maybe write a little 4 above that G to remind you to play that G with your fourth finger. Now we're going to have the same thing here, right? Because we have in the fourth measure, we have D, and then we have G, right? So instead of jumping with our third finger, let's go ahead and just play that G with our fourth finger, and then down to the second line. And it repeats. This is the same as it was at the beginning. Now this G here, you can do it with your fourth finger if you've just kind of gotten into that habit, but you don't have to because the note after it is an E. It's not a D this time. So I would just, that G can be played with just standard G fingering if you want. And then the third measure of the second line. All right, there we go. So that's the idea. It's a very simple melody. It's getting us kind of back into the thing. It's really common when you enter into a second book of a method to kind of take it back a few notches. Don't start throwing things that are too crazy at you right away, but we're going to kind of build back in and kind of start taking off with some new concepts. All right. So let's go ahead and add the chords to this. You can see what it sounds like, and then I'll bump the tempo up. You can hear it at a faster tempo. So what I'm going to do on the chords here, I'm going to just pick one of the chord patterns. I'm actually going to pick number 3. No, you know what? I'm going to kind of do a hybrid. So I'm going to like do one measure of exercise 3 chord pattern, and then the second measure I'm going to do exercise 2. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth between the two patterns here for the chords. All right, so here we go. Here are the chords for exercise 4, 72 on the metronome. 1, 2, and ready and play. And there it is. All right, let's go ahead and bump this whole thing up. We're going to try it at 100 on the metronome. Oh, 1, 2, oh, 1, 2, ready and play. All right, that's our lesson for today. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and as always, stay tuned for our next guitar lesson. We'll see you next time. Thanks.